Welcome to Control Talk. This is your host, Eric Stromquist, and today I have a very special guest, an old friend, Gary Weber from Belimo Air Controls. Gary, thanks so much for being with us.
You're welcome. Glad to be here, Eric.
Now, when I say old, Gary doesn't look that old, but Gary, you and I go way back. You work with several different companies in the controls industry.
Right.
Tell our viewers a little bit about your background in HVAC controls.
Okay. I worked at Johnson Controls for 17 years, Siemens for 10 years, and have been at Belimo for about 8 years.
8 years. Well, we love Belimo. We love all those other companies too, but from your perspective, what makes Belimo different?
Belimo, it's a culture. They're very customer focused. Everything is centered on the customer. Do what's right for the customer. And it's a very welcome concept. I buy into that. I love it. And it's a great fit. It's a great fit.
Well, the other thing that I think makes you guys a little bit different, for our viewers who may not know Belimo, which would be very surprising, if you see those orange actuators out there, those are made by Belimo. So where the other major control companies have portfolios that include everything from controls to valves and actuators,
right.
Belimo's philosophy is a little bit different. What do you guys do?
Yeah, very focused. Valves and actuators, our mission statement, our value statement, everything is focused on just valves and actuators, and we don't deviate from that. And it works.
Well, it really does. I remember back when you were with one of those other companies, Belimo came out. They were the first people to come out with the direct coupled actuators. Those little things that looks like bookends that slide on a damper shaft.
Yep.
And back in the day, we had the big mod motors, and everybody goes, nobody's going to want to use one of those orange things. I mean, it was almost heresy, right? We want the big gear train actuators. You guys single-handedly sort of changed the way people look at doing damper actuation and valve actuation.
Yes. Actually, the start of Belimo, it was a couple of ex-Siemens guys on the actuator that thought they can build a better actuator, a different concept. And it took a while to grab hold, but obviously today the direct mount actuator is the standard actuator. So right. Belimo was first. They've done recently a lot of first in other products, but that's kind of their concept.
The first thing there. Well, yeah, speaking of unique things, I know something that's very passionate to you is the fire and smoke dampers.
Yes.
And for our viewers out there, I mean, that sort of gets neglected in most buildings. I mean, all buildings have them because code requires that you have the fire and smoke dampers.
Right.
Talk to our viewers a little bit about why those are important, Belimo's approach to that, and what a building owner should be aware of.
Sure. There's a couple items, and that's a good point, because fire and smoke is, it's an actuator, but it's a very different actuator, different application. And it typically doesn't reside in the HVAC part of the business. In a building, that's usually a security or a card access type of person. It's not the traditional HVAC. So you got to find that individual. The HVAC guy doesn't do anything. It's a safety issue, obviously. Very high priority, very high concern. They have to do certain amount of testing, minimum times a year. So it's a very intensive, but people don't know that HVAC distributors carry these, which is a different fallacy. And you can replace a Honeywell actuator with a Belimo actuator, as long as it went through UL on approval. So it's a different mindset, but it's a very basic application.
I think I hear somebody calling right now trying to get one of those actuators. So we are at Stromquist & Company, so you will hear the phone ringing occasionally. That means that customers are calling.
Customers are calling, there you go.
So, but the fire and smoke, again, I mean, it's critical because if those things, I mean, that's a potential liability, isn't it, for an owner if they don't have a program set up to check those?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
And there are codes, there are UL codes, states vary, but you have to check them a minimum time every 2-3 years.
Every 2 or 3 years.
You have to go through the whole process, and they've got to be working, you're right. Because if they're not working and unfortunately a fire happens, it's too late to figure that out.
So what happens is the damper actually closes if there's a fire, which makes sure that the fire doesn't spread. Is that
correct?
The principle behind it?
The application is a little different. On HVAC side, the actuator operates, and if it's satisfied, it closes. The fire and smoke damper is powered on all the time, and the only time it's shut off is obviously when a fire happens and when it's told to. So it's powered all the time relative to an HVAC actuator, which is not powered all the time.
Gotcha.
Different application.
Completely different. And I think the message for our viewers is this: hey, Belimo's got a great distribution network throughout the country. Hey, if you're in Georgia or Florida, obviously Stromquist & Company is your Belimo source. But in other parts of the country, they can go to the Belimo website and get those distributors, or we'll actually have those on Control Trends as well.
Yep. Huge opportunity for an HVAC distributor, really
Right,
is. But you
right.
have to know who to contact, who to talk to. You know, that's 80% of the problem.
And typically that's a different individual in the building.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly.
Now, another thing you guys sort of pioneered, at least from my perception, and tell me if I'm correct on this, is typically with valves, HVAC valves, you know, we typically had the typical globe type valve. Am I mistaken in saying Belimo was sort of the pioneer in terms of using a ball valve, which is a lot less expensive, characterizing in that such a way that you guys could get good flow control? I mean, was that you guys too?
Yeah, you're a great salesperson for Belimo. That's
So
super.
that was another
That's
innovative, yeah.
Exactly. The traditional ball valve has characteristics in terms of flow that doesn't work for HVAC applications. Belimo patented and put in this characterized disc, so to speak, so they evened out the curve and made it more traditional as a globe valve. So yes, that was back in the late 80s that we introduced that.
So let me get this straight. I used to be able to sell gear train actuators for $500 or $600 a pop. You guys come up with these direct coupled actuators that are half or more less expensive.
Significantly less, correct.
So I'm making less money. Distributors like me are making less money. Then you guys come up with the characterized ball valves as opposed to the globe valves, which are much more expensive. Why am I even talking to you?
Well, again, with Belimo focusing on the customer, the contractor, making it easy, making it simple to install, and quality issues, making sure it lasts. Now, you're right, that doesn't necessarily fit with a distributor, but again, for the contractor, loves Belimo, still comes to buy it from Stromquist.
Well, I'll tell you what, the other thing in your product portfolio that really sort of has impressed me over the years is another innovation that I think you guys are pioneering. If you didn't invent it, at least you are leading the way in it, is the pressure independent characterized,
Yes.
the PIC valve.
Yes.
Tell our viewers what that's all about.
Yeah. Pressure independent characterized control valve, PICCV. In a traditional system, when you have changes in the load, obviously the pressures in the system go up and down and the valve has to accommodate. With a pressure independent valve, doesn't matter in terms of the pressure variations in the system. You set it at a GPM and leave it there and it will control irregardless of what happens. Very revolutionary type of a concept.
So what I'm hearing, not only you get energy savings from that, but if you're a building and, for example, on the top floor, you're not getting the heating or cooling you need, essentially that could be a balancing. So it's constantly balancing. So not only does it save money, but it also can solve control problems.
Correct, correct. And in a building like an office building, a tenant build out, when new tenants come in, obviously when they come in and you turn the system on in that particular office, then you have to adjust or change the rest of the building. If you put this pressure independent characterized control valve in there and turn it on and set it, doesn't matter how many new people come in, it's going to adjust and maintain that flow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the great thing about Belimo too is at least in our area, we've had an opportunity for that, and like a university or a building is not sure whether it's going to work or not. I mean, in the past, you guys have given us a valve to have installed so the customer can actually see how it works. So Belimo is very flexible in that to our viewers. Very, very easy organization to work with. So that's a really unique product.
Yeah.
So I'd like to shift gears a little bit. So that's sort of the past, but looking out into the future. When I was at your Platinum Distributor meeting last fall,
Right.
the theme was energy.
Yes.
And I think, everybody's looking for ways to save energy, and it seems like Belimo has put that brain power behind coming up with ideas and concepts that can allow users to save energy going forward.
Correct.
Speak a bit about that.
Okay, yeah. Belimo in the past probably 3 or 4 years, a big focus has been on the valve side and the energy savings in the HVAC water side system. Energy is a big focus. Our CEO, Jacques, made a presentation at the meeting, at the Platinum meeting, and what he did is he said, energy cannot be created, but it can be saved.
Yes.
So, take what energy you have and maximize that. Belimo has come out, or introducing this year, what we call an energy valve, which is a very radical concept on how you maintain flow. It looks at a coil, and it maintains that flow around the coil. The coil has a delta T, temperature differential, that it tries to maintain.
So you're talking about like a chill water or hot water coil.
Correct, as a coil. And as that coil degrades, it gets dirty, the fins get bent and stuff. It degrades so that more flow going through doesn't necessarily give you equal amount. So, and you waste, it's
Yes.
waste. So there's a algorithm in there called a delta T control, delta temperature control, that will maintain temperature control and cede the control from the system so that you don't push more energy through, or at least ask for more flow, and you're not going to get a lot from that. So what it equates to is savings.
Yeah,
lots of
nice,
savings.
Nice. So people want to know about when is the product available?
It's scheduled to be released at the end of April.
Cool. You looking for anybody to beta test it for you?
We've actually got 5 systems beta testing. We've been doing this for the last 3 years with MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, been working with them on this concept, and we've gone 3 years. The other thing with this, you talk about continuous commissioning is
Yes.
the term we use.
Yes.
And it
Big
constantly maintains and monitors, and if the situation gets to a point where you're going to waste energy, it'll change. Monitor that. Once it gets past that, it'll go back. So it's continuously analyzing, collecting data, making changes, and then go forward.
If you need to control it or measure it, Stromquist & Company has a control solution for you. With over $2 million of inventory between our Georgia and Florida locations, an easy-to-use online ordering platform, same-day shipping, and a factory-trained team of controls experts to answer your questions, Stromquist & Company continues in its tradition of offering great service and great products.